Hi, Zizaran here with another video for the upcoming Crucible League, and this is going to be a shorter video about maps, Atlas progression, and tips and tricks for mapping. I'll also cover and talk a little bit about Atlas trees. I also have a Path of Exile University episode on this if you want more in-depth if you're an even newer player. This is going to assume that you have some basic knowledge. The number one tip that I want to show you is selling maps 3-1. So my map's a little scuffed right now, but that doesn't really matter because we don't know what's going to be specific tiers. But it's very, very important to learn what, for example, natural tiers mean. So natural tiers is what the map is. So right now, Forking River is a tier 2. It can still exist at like level tier 6, 8, etc. if you put in void stones, but that's not its natural tier, right? So natural tier is the first time a map appears on the Atlas. Even with no void stones in, maps go from tier 1 to 16. That means there are normally like 4 or 5 tier 16 maps. So they are the only ones that you can get by selling maps, like 3 tier 15s, or they're the only maps you can get by horizon orbing. And we can use this to our advantage. So by having 7 or 8 of one map, so for example, Forking River, I can get every map the tier above. So these 3, no matter what, will sell for Cobes, no matter how I put them in. But if I put in these 3, that sells for Caldera. These 3 also sell for Caldera, but these 3 sell for Bone Crypt. And these 3 sell for Sepulture. Think of them as having their own unique item ID, and you're just mixing and matching different recipes. So I think it's 7 or 8 you need to be able to get anything above. Kirak is really, really important to use. You can hold Alt down to show completed ones. Some of them will have like special things, like this one has 5 additional Torment Spirits. But what about things like rolling maps and the Atlas? So generally lately, rolling maps has been pretty easy, where you can sustain white and yellows and even reds to some degree with just running them blue. So that would be like transmuting them, etc. Early on, you end up going for nodes such as Shaping the Skies, Shaping the Mountains. I usually take Commissioned Officer the first few days as well. And either things like Shaping the Seas is nice too in the start. But later, and I'll talk a little bit about how I build my tree, but later you end up having maybe things like Harbinger, Strong Boxes, etc. And you won't need it as much. What about things like when should you chisel maps? Well, I normally chisel everything like tier 11 plus if I'm dropping a lot of chisels. But it's going to depend a little bit on the league. Last league, I was dropping a lot less chisels than normal, and I was pretty much only able to chisel every tier 16. It's especially important to chisel if you're going to be chiseling scarabs and sextants. We can talk a little bit about sextants, for example. So now I grab my a few void stones off Kirak, and these you can roll with sextants. So this is a really good one. Down's okay. Like if you're at the start of when you've started using sextants, these are probably okay to keep because you do get an additional map. But normally the main thing I'm looking for is stuff like this. There are really rare ones like this as well that you can drop. They're obviously worth keeping. But you sort of get a pretty like good feel for what is good early on. Shrines are good. Anything that adds monsters to my map or does something interesting is good. This is a thing that I would roll over a lot. So you want to use sextants, like I just showed you. You want to chisel the map. And then we have scarabs as well. There's a lot of good scarabs. The scarabs that I end up using for density and generic mapping would be like Breach, Abyss, and then an Elder Scarab. Just any level Elder Scarab adds so many monsters to your map. Shaper's okay too, but they're a lot slower. So I don't really use those. Cartographer map can be really good, or sorry, the Scarab can be really good when you're just hitting tier 16s. And other than that, Ambush is really great as well. The other ones are just sort of good to throw in. There is a recipe. You can sell 2 Scarabs and 1 Horizon Orb to get a random Scarab off that tier. So if you sell 2 Gilded Torment Scarabs and a Horizon Orb, you get a random single Scarab of something else. So that could be useful on SSF. And as far as rolling the maps, it's obviously going to depend on what your build can handle. Some builds that are able to run every map mod can wall their maps and get a lot of scary but rewarding maps that way. I'm not a big fan of walling my maps because you will end up getting maps that you won't be able to run, especially in hardcore, because you can get crazy damage modifiers. Like the number one thing I'm scared of is monsters fire additional projectiles or players have minus to their maximum resistances. But you should also keep an eye out for like if the monsters have frenzy, they have increased damage, business extra fire and cold, that's 4 damage mods, you're going to be getting absolutely shredded. Whereas, you know, if it's crit and you're not crit immune, crit, min-max, and multi-proj, you're just going to vaporize. So that's another thing to be careful of. Now we're going to look at the new Atlas tree. And I will actually not really be giving you specific trees. Mine is generally public, so you can always follow it with what I'm doing as I'm putting it in. It's not necessarily the most optimal. And I think that's a really important thing to understand is it's pretty much okay no matter what you take. There probably will be some optimal ones for currency generation on softcore. And then there's going to be people like Grimro, yo guys, Grim here, that are going to be really good to follow for things like that, for like min-maxing currency generation. It's all about just specializing into something you enjoy doing, and it will be really, really profitable. And the number one thing is to have fun. But we finally have wormholes. We have gateways, probably inspired by Steel Mage's wormhole jewel. And these are really cool. So there's a few. So like this one connects to this one connects to this one connects to this one. I think that's all the 3 wormholes. But it basically means that if you're over here on the left and you really want to pick up Breach as well, you don't need to waste like 8 points. You just need to waste 2 points, because this one needs to be selected and then this one. That is very, very cool. It's definitely going to give us a few extra points to play around with and will make it a lot more... Like, honestly, it's such a cool idea. It definitely saves us like probably 5 to 10 on most trees. But I'll talk a little bit about what I end up doing and how start goes for me. I pretty much always take this first. Essence is such an important thing of early hardcore gearing. And then I end up going here and pretty much rushing Commission Officer. I especially like rushing Commission Officer if I'm about to do... If I can get it in the first 5 hours, so that before the clock hits midnight or 1 a.m., whatever the time is, I get 2 Keurig missions on day 1 before the first reset. That's really cool in my opinion. But obviously that's like if you're pushing extremely fast. I just also like having it. I use Keurig missions so much for my early completion, just for looking for 6 links and for looking for maps that I need. So as much Keurig chance as I can get, I'm very, very happy with. And also just getting more scouting reports. I know a lot of people do like the comprehensive stuff early too, but I don't take that much myself. Next up, I like taking Shaping the Skies pretty early, and then I'm pretty much rushing the essence nodes. Sometimes map generation is so good you don't even need to take Shaping the Skies, and I end up doing something like this. I do this really early and then followed, if I have a very strong build, followed by this. And now what I've set myself up for is I can spam low tier maps really fast. I can just go in, find the essence, and leave. Sometimes there would be more than one, but as soon as I've found one essence, I can just up and leave. And this ends up being such a good way to get gear. Essence is on the Atlas now as well. So for, I think it's 2 or 3 C per map, you can get a bunch of extra essences. So very, very fast way to gear. Now the next thing that I start looking for then is going to be, for me, Expedition. And the reason that I want to get a lot of Expedition is that's going to be my main way of safely getting item level 86 bases on hardcore. And that's really what I want to craft on. I do Expedition for that, and I take all the Expedition nodes. And then after that, it depends how many points I have, but it's going to be, maybe I want Harbinger to have some Horizon Orbs and Harbinger Orbs early, as well as Fracturing Orbs. But Fracturing Orbs are so rare. Harbinger is also nice for just XP. It drops a lot of fractured bases. Honestly, the more I think about it, I really do like having Harbinger early, even though it is one of the first things to go for me. I do remove it pretty early. Harvest as well is extremely good. However, I feel like I'm not really able to invest into Expedition and Harvest at the same time. So Expedition for me ends up being something that I'm doing Expedition to get a lot of my early bases, and then I use Harvest to craft them afterwards. But Harvest would be one of the next things that I would take. I would prioritize nodes like this, and then I would grab this and start trying to get Oshabis and stuff. Because right now, there's not that much else that I would get. It is going to depend a little bit on what you like as well. There are things that are really good early, like maybe you really need golden oils, then you might have to consider taking Blight early. Abyss and Breach might be huge, right? We don't really know. So I guess the thing that I really want to drive home, Like, this is a nice generic start, but it's going to depend so much on what you enjoy doing. And like I said, there are great software creators for really min-maxing profits. I just want to make sure that people really understand that there is not really a wrong Atlas skill tree. Some people might notice that I haven't talked about the blocking ones. In my opinion, these are currently bait, at least for the way how I currently play. So people will then ask like, well, what about Legion and stuff? Like, are you running them when you haven't spec'd into it? No, I'm not. Very, very often, I might sometimes click it and not let anything come out, and I look for like incubators and stuff just to pick up an early 6th. But I honestly will just skip mechanics that I haven't specialized into. And if I'm going to farm something, I will respec, farm it loads, and then spec out of it and probably not have it for a while. So I feel like with the way they've changed it now, like look at the spawn chance here. This is like 4% per node, and you very quickly get to between 50 and 70 spawn chance of the mechanics that you're specking into. I don't really care that much about all of the other mechanics or getting another 2%. That's not that important to me. So lastly, I don't think I had these at all. Now, they are still incredibly useful because it can be a little psychologically hard for you to skip things because it's a very natural human thing to do like, well, the Legion is there. I'm just passing up free stuff by not doing it. Whereas, you know, you're technically wasting time. So you will make more profit or more. It depends a little bit what your outcome is. But if you do want to be more efficient, but you have a really hard time with skipping things that aren't worth it, then they are worth it. But I am able to skip it, so I don't take them. I hope that made sense. I do end up making sure that I have things like these nodes if I'm farming blue influence, those nodes if I'm farming red influence. But that's more like endgame things, and you'll switch around. There's very few bad nodes. I'm not a big fan of Metamorph and Delirium myself. Hope that makes sense and gives you some sort of basic understanding of where to start and what to do. And that's pretty much all I have for like tips and tricks. I just wanted to make a shorter video. I do have a longer one that goes more in depth, favored maps, etc. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy a quicker video on it. Thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.